Have you ever shown kindness to a stranger and had it completely change your life? Maybe you helped someone having a bad day, offered a listening ear when someone was struggling, or simply chose compassion over judgment in a moment when it would have been easier to walk away. Drop your state in the comments if you believe in the power of compassion, because what I'm about to share with you shows just how much one act of kindness can transform everything. Glass shatters across marble floors. A wine bottle tumbles in slow motion, deep red liquid spreading like blood across white tablecloth. Naomi watches the well-dressed man standing amid the wreckage, his chest heaving, his hands trembling, and everyone else sees chaos. Everyone else sees destruction, but she sees something different. She sees the wild panic in his dark eyes, the way his fingers clutch at his collar like he can't breathe, the fine tremor running through his entire body. She sees someone drowning in a crowded room, and every instinct she has screams at her to help. 6 hours earlier, Naomi Park had arrived at Celestine for what she thought would be just another Saturday night shift. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a sleek glass tower in downtown Los Angeles. All floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city lights and modern minimalist decor that whispered money in every clean line. At 25, Naomi had been working at Celestine for 2 years, saving every penny she could scrape together for nursing school. Her acceptance letter sat on her tiny apartment refrigerator, a constant reminder of why she smiled through entitled customers and aching feet. Another year, maybe 2 if tips stayed good, and she could finally start the career she'd dreamed about since high school. The evening had started normally enough. Naomi tied her long black hair into a neat bun, smoothed down her crisp white shirt and black slacks, and checked her reflection in the employee bathroom mirror. She looked professional, approachable, exactly what Celestine expected from their servers. Her manager Gregory had already posted the seating chart, and she'd been assigned to Section 3, the prime tables near the windows. Good tips tonight, she'd thought, allowing herself a moment of optimism. The restaurant began filling up around 7. Celestine specialized in Korean fusion cuisine, and on Saturday nights they brought in a live jazz quartet that played smooth interpretations of everything from classics to K-pop. The music floated through the space, elegant and understated, while well-dressed diners sipped expensive wine and murmured over artfully plated dishes. Naomi moved through her section with practiced efficiency, taking orders, delivering food, refilling water glasses, her mind half on her tables and half on the anatomy textbook she'd been studying that morning. She noticed him the moment he walked in. The man was probably in his early 30s, tall and lean, with perfectly styled black hair and sharp features that would have been handsome if not for the tension radiating from every line of his body. He wore a charcoal suit that Naomi recognized as designer, the kind of tailored perfection that cost more than she made in 3 months. 2 men flanked him, both built like linebackers stuffed into slightly cheaper suits, their eyes constantly scanning the room with the practiced alertness of professional security. The maitre d' led them to a table in Section 5, not Naomi's area, but she found her gaze drifting back to them anyway. Something about the man seemed wrong. He sat rigidly upright, his shoulders tight, his jaw clenched. When the server approached, he barely glanced at the menu before ordering, his voice clipped and strained. The 2 bodyguards positioned themselves at a nearby table, close enough to intervene, but far enough to provide the illusion of privacy. Naomi had seen plenty of wealthy customers at Celestine, had served celebrities and tech moguls and old-money socialites. But this felt different. This man didn't have the casual confidence of someone used to luxury. He looked like someone forcing themselves through an ordeal. The restaurant grew more crowded as the evening progressed. By 8:30, every table was full and the jazz quartet had shifted into a more upbeat set. The noise level rose, laughter and conversation blending with the music into a pleasant hum that Naomi usually found energizing. But when she glanced toward Section 5 again, she saw the man's knuckles had gone white where they gripped his water glass. His server, a newer hire named Marcus, approached the table with the first course. The man barely touched his food, just moved it around his plate, while his eyes darted toward the increasingly crowded space around him. The bodyguards ate steadily, professional and alert, but they didn't seem to notice their employer's distress. Or maybe they were used to it. Naomi delivered a bottle of wine to one of her own tables, accepted their compliments on her recommendation with a warm smile. But her attention kept pulling back to Section 5. The man had gone very still now, almost frozen, his breathing visibly shallow. She recognized that look. Her younger brother Danny had looked like that sometimes, back before the panic attacks became full-blown anxiety disorder, back before everything fell apart. The thought of Danny sent a familiar pang through her chest. 3 years gone now, killed in crossfire outside a convenience store because he'd been in the wrong place when rival gangs decided to shoot up the block. He'd been 19, bright and funny with his whole life ahead of him, and Naomi still woke up sometimes expecting to hear his voice calling her from the next room. Their mother had never fully recovered. Naomi had learned to carry her grief like a weight she'd grown accustomed to, heavy but manageable most days. She shook off the memory and focused on her tables. Section 3 was demanding tonight, a business dinner that wanted multiple courses timed perfectly and a couple celebrating an anniversary who kept changing their wine order. Naomi handled it all with practiced grace, but she couldn't quite ignore the growing tension she felt every time she looked toward the man in the expensive suit. It happened at 9:15. The restaurant was at peak capacity, every table full, the jazz quartet playing something fast and complex, and the noise level had risen to almost a roar. Naomi was carrying a tray of desserts toward her anniversary couple when she heard the crash. The man had stood up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. His hand swept across the table, sending his wine glass flying. It shattered against the floor, deep red wine spreading across white marble. His water glass followed, then his plate, food scattering. The couple at the next table gasped and jerked back. The jazz quartet stumbled to a halt. In the sudden shocked silence, Naomi could hear the man's ragged breathing. Gregory appeared instantly, his face already shifting into his dealing with a problem expression. The bodyguards had risen to their feet, tense and ready but uncertain. Every eye in the restaurant fixed on the man standing amid the wreckage of his table, and Naomi saw what everyone else was seeing. Rich, entitled customer having some kind of tantrum. Destruction. Chaos. Someone who needed to be removed before he caused more damage. But Naomi saw something different. She saw the wild panic in his dark eyes, the way he'd clawed his collar open like he couldn't get enough air. She saw the tremor running through his hands, the pale cast to his olive skin, the way he seemed completely disconnected from the destruction around him. This wasn't anger. This was terror. She set down her tray and moved before she'd consciously decided to do it. Gregory reached the table first, already saying something about calling security in his smooth, professional voice. The bodyguards had positioned themselves between their employer and the approaching manager, their body language protective but confused. The man himself just stood there shaking, his breathing coming in harsh gasps that Naomi knew would turn into hyperventilation if someone didn't intervene soon. "Naomi," she said, her voice calm and quiet as she stepped past Gregory. "Sir, I think you need some air." She didn't touch him, didn't crowd him, just positioned herself where he could see her clearly. His dark eyes focused on her face with desperate intensity, like she was an anchor in a storm. "Can you walk?" she asked. "There's a private patio through the kitchen. It's quiet there." The man managed a jerky nod. Naomi glanced at the bodyguards and inclined her head toward the kitchen entrance. "Follow me," she said, and started walking without waiting to see if they would comply. She heard footsteps behind her, the man's unsteady gait flanked by the heavier tread of his security. Gregory called after her, something about not being necessary, but Naomi ignored him. She led them through the bustling kitchen where line cooks barely glanced up from their work, through a service hallway, and out a side door to a small patio that the restaurant used for employee breaks. The night air was cool and clear, the sounds of the city muted by the height of the building. The patio held a few plastic chairs and a small table, nothing like the elegant interior, but it was quiet and private, and most importantly uncrowded. Naomi turned to find the man already leaning against the railing, his head bowed, his breathing still ragged but starting to slow. She pulled out one of the plastic chairs. "Sit down," she said gently. "Put your head between your knees if you need to." He sank into the chair like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. The bodyguards hovered nearby, uncertain, but Naomi waved them back a few steps. "Give him space," she said. "He just needs room to breathe." For several minutes, no one spoke. Naomi just stood nearby, close enough to help if needed, but far enough not to crowd, while the man focused on pulling air into his lungs. She could see his hands gripping his knees, the fine tremor gradually subsiding. The panic was receding. She could tell, the immediate crisis passing. She'd seen this enough times with Danny to recognize the pattern. Finally, the man raised his head. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice hoarse. His English was accentless, educated. "I didn't mean to cause a scene." Naomi shook her head. "Panic attacks aren't something you can control. Do you need water? I can bring some." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Naomi felt the full force of his attention like a physical thing. His eyes were very dark, almost black in the dim patio lighting, and there was something wounded in them that made her chest tighten. "You're not afraid of me," he said, and it sounded like a question. "Should I be?" Naomi asked. "Most people are." He seemed to consider this. "Or they're disgusted. Or they think I'm crazy." "You're not crazy," Naomi said firmly. "You had a panic attack. Lots of people have them. It doesn't make you crazy or weak or anything else. It just means you're human." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in whatever armor he usually wore. When was the last time someone spoke to him like this? She wondered. When was the last time someone showed him basic compassion without judgment or fear? "What's your name?" he asked. "Naomi. Naomi Park." "Thank you, Naomi Park." He straightened in the chair, some of his composure returning. "I'm Jinwoo. Jinwoo Kong." The name meant nothing to her. "Nice to meet you, Jinwoo," she said. "Do you feel better? Can you breathe okay now?" "Yes." He drew a deep breath as if testing it. "Yes, I'm better. Thanks to you." One of the bodyguards cleared his throat. "Sir, we should go. You've had enough for tonight." Jinwoo nodded slowly, but his eyes stayed on Naomi's face. "You didn't ask what triggered it," he said. "You didn't ask why I freaked out or demand an explanation." "Why?" Naomi shrugged. "It's none of my business. You needed help, not an interrogation. Most people would have called security. Had me thrown out." "Most people are focused on the wrong things," Naomi said. She meant it. In her experience, people spent so much time judging and categorizing and protecting themselves that they missed opportunities to actually help someone who was struggling. Jinwoo stood, and Naomi realized how tall he was, probably over 6 feet. He pulled out his wallet, extracted several bills, and held them out to her. "For the trouble I caused." Naomi blinked at the stack of hundreds. "That's way too much." "Please," he said, "and I'd like you to have it. You showed me kindness when you didn't have to. That's worth more than money, but this is all I can offer right now." She took the bills, mostly because refusing seemed like it would create more awkwardness. "Thank you. That's very generous." They stood there for a moment longer, something passing between them that Naomi couldn't quite name. Then Jinwoo inclined his head, a gesture that was almost formal, and turned toward the door. His bodyguards fell into step beside him. "Naomi," he said, pausing at the threshold. "I won't forget this." Then he was gone, disappearing back into the building with his security. Naomi stood alone on the patio, the night air cool against her skin, and counted the money he'd given her. $5,000. She almost laughed at the absurdity of it. $5,000 for 15 minutes of basic human decency. When she returned to the dining room, Gregory pounced immediately. "What on earth were you thinking?" he demanded. "I was handling the situation. You can't just walk off with customers, even difficult ones." "He wasn't being difficult," Naomi said quietly. "He was having a medical emergency and needed help." She showed him the money. He left this to cover any damages and compensate for the disruption. Gregory's eyes went wide. 5,000 for a broken wine glass and some spilled food? "Apparently," Naomi said. She handed him half. "This should more than cover the damages and lost business. The rest is my tip." Gregory took the money, still looking stunned. "Who was that man? Do you know?" Naomi shook her head. "Just someone who needed help." She finished her shift in a daze, her mind replaying the scene on the patio over and over. The way Jinwoo had looked at her, like she'd given him something precious. The haunted quality in his dark eyes. The fine tremor in his hands that spoke of trauma deeper than just tonight's panic attack. The unexpected gentleness in his voice when he'd thanked her. By the time Naomi clocked out and headed to the employee parking garage, it was past midnight. She drove through the quiet streets toward her apartment in Koreatown, the city lights blurring past her windows, and wondered if she'd ever see Jinwoo Kong again. Probably not. Rich men like that existed in different worlds than struggling waitresses saving for nursing school. Tonight had been a strange, isolated incident, nothing more. But when she finally fell into bed in her tiny studio, exhausted from the long shift, Naomi couldn't stop thinking about those dark eyes and the way he'd said her name. Like it mattered. Like she mattered. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at her that way. 3 days passed before Naomi saw Jin Wukong again. She'd almost convinced herself that their encounter had been a one-time thing, a strange incident that would fade into just another odd memory from years of restaurant work. Then he walked through Celestine's doors on Tuesday evening, and her heart did something complicated in her chest. He looked different tonight, calmer. The tension that had radiated from him during their first meeting had softened into something more controlled. He wore a navy suit this time, equally expensive but somehow less armor-like. When the maitre d' approached him, Jinwoo said something and gestured toward Naomi's section. She felt his gaze find her across the dining room, and even from this distance, she could see the slight smile that touched his lips. The maitre d' led him to a two-top near the windows in section 3. Naomi took a steadying breath and walked over with a menu and water glass, her professional smile firmly in place. "Good evening," she said. "Welcome back to Celestine." "Naomi," Jinwoo said, and the way he said her name made it sound important somehow. "I was hoping you'd be working tonight." She set down the water. "I work most evenings. Can I start you with something to drink?" "Whatever you recommend," he said. "I trust your judgment." That surprised her. Most customers at Celestine had very specific preferences and weren't shy about expressing them. She suggested a Korean sake that paired well with their signature dishes, and Jinwoo accepted without hesitation. When she returned with the bottle and a small cup, he was studying the menu with apparent interest. "How have you been?" he asked as she poured. "Since Saturday, I mean." "Fine," Naomi said carefully. "Busy. How about you?" "Better." He met her eyes. "I wanted to apologize properly for what happened. I'm sure I caused you trouble with your manager." "It's fine," Naomi assured him. "Everything was fine. The $5,000 I left covered the damages?" "More than covered them," Naomi said, and felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That was extremely generous." "Too generous, really." Jinwoo shook his head. "It wasn't enough. You helped me when you didn't have to. When most people wouldn't have. That kind of compassion is rare." Naomi didn't know what to say to that, so she deflected into safer territory. "Are you ready to order, or do you need a few more minutes?" They talked through the menu, Jinwoo asking her opinions and actually listening to her answers. He ordered several dishes, enough for 2 people, and when Naomi pointed this out, he said he hadn't eaten all day and was starving. She left him with his sake and went to input the order, aware of his eyes following her across the dining room. Her coworker Maya cornered her at the server station. "Okay, spill," Maya said. "How do you know Jin Wukong?" "I don't really know him," Naomi said. "He came in Saturday, and I helped him with something." "Why?" Maya's eyes went wide. "You don't know who he is?" "Should I?" "Naomi, that's Jin Wukong. His father is Park Kong-dae. They run the Korean mob in LA." The words hit Naomi like cold water. She stared at Maya, waiting for the punchline, but her friend's expression remained serious. "You're joking," Naomi said. "I wish." Maya glanced toward Jinwoo's table. "Everyone in Koreatown knows the Kong family. They control everything from Little Tokyo to Monterey Park. Protection, gambling, probably drugs, though no one can prove it. Jinwoo is the only son. He's supposed to take over the organization eventually." Naomi's stomach twisted. No, she thought. Not again. Not another connection to that world. Her brother Danny hadn't been in a gang, but he'd known people who were. He'd grown up in the same rough neighborhood, gone to the same underfunded schools, faced the same limited options. The bullets that killed him hadn't even been meant for him. He'd just been standing outside a store when someone decided to settle a score. And 3 years later, Naomi still woke up sometimes hearing her mother's screams when the police came to their door. She'd promised herself after Danny's funeral that she would stay as far from gangs and organized crime and violence as humanly possible. She would build a clean, safe life. She would become a nurse and help people and never, ever let that darkness touch her again. And now she'd shown kindness to a mobster's son. Maya touched her arm gently. "Hey, you okay? You went really pale." "I'm fine," Naomi lied. "I just didn't know." "Well, now you do." Maya's voice softened. "Look, I don't know what happened Saturday, but be careful, okay? The Kong family isn't people you want to get involved with." Naomi nodded mutely and went to check on her other tables, her mind spinning. She delivered Jinwoo's food when it came up, setting each dish in front of him with mechanical precision. He thanked her warmly, asked if she could sit with him for a moment during her break, and Naomi heard herself agreeing before her brain could catch up with her mouth. 20 minutes later, she slid into the chair across from him. He'd eaten about half the food and pushed the plates toward the center of the table. "Please, help yourself," he said. "I ordered too much and I hate waste." "I can't," Naomi said. "We're not supposed to eat with customers." "Then just sit," Jinwoo said. "Talk to me. Tell me about yourself." "There isn't much to tell," Naomi said. "I work here. I'm saving for nursing school. That's pretty much my whole life right now." "Nursing," Jinwoo repeated. "That suits you. You have a caring nature." "Or I'm just good at my job," Naomi said, and it came out sharper than she'd intended. Jinwoo studied her face. "Someone told you who I am." It wasn't a question. Naomi felt her defenses rise. "Is it true? Is your father really Park Kangdae?" "Yes," Jinwoo said simply. He didn't flinch from it, didn't try to deny or minimize. "My father runs an organization that operates outside the law. I won't insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise." "And you?" Naomi asked. "Are you part of it?" Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment. "I'm his son," he said finally. "That makes me part of it whether I want to be or not. But I run a legitimate architecture firm. I design buildings, Naomi. I don't hurt people." "Your father does," Naomi said. "My father does a lot of things I don't agree with," Jinwoo replied. "But he's still my father, and I can't change who I was born to any more than you can." The truth of that settled between them. Naomi thought of Danny, of the promise she'd made to herself, of every reason she should get up and walk away right now. But she also thought of Jinwoo's panic attack, his genuine gratitude, the wounded look in his eyes when he'd said, "Most people are afraid of me." He hadn't chosen his family any more than Danny had chosen to grow up in a neighborhood where violence was a constant threat. "I should get back to work," Naomi said, standing. Jinwoo nodded. "Thank you for sitting with me, even for just a few minutes." She walked away feeling his eyes on her back, her emotions a tangled mess she didn't have time to sort through. When Jinwoo left an hour later, he'd left another absurdly large tip, $1,000 this time, and a note with his phone number. "Just in case you ever want to talk," the note said. "No pressure. No expectations." Naomi tucked the note into her apron pocket and tried to forget about it. Jinwoo came back 2 nights later, and 3 nights after that, and twice the following week. Always requesting Naomi's section, always polite and calm, always leaving generous tips. They fell into a pattern. He would order, she would serve him, and during her breaks they would talk. Just talk. He never pushed for more, never made her uncomfortable, just seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. Naomi learned that Jinwoo had studied architecture at USC, that he loved classical music and Korean poetry, that he spoke 3 languages fluently. He told her about buildings he'd designed, about his frustration with city planning commissions, about his dream of creating affordable housing that was actually beautiful and dignified. He was intelligent and thoughtful and surprisingly funny, and Naomi found herself looking forward to his visits despite every instinct screaming at her to keep her distance. 2 weeks after their first meeting, Naomi finally asked him about the panic attacks. They were sitting in a quiet corner booth, the dinner rush over, and Jinwoo had been telling her about a building he was designing in Santa Monica. The conversation had lulled naturally, and the question just slipped out. "What triggers them?" "The panic attacks, I mean." "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." Jinwoo's expression shifted, some of the lightness leaving his face. "Crowds," he said quietly. "Loud noises. Feeling trapped or confined. It's been that way for 5 years." "What happened 5 years ago?" Naomi asked gently. "I was kidnapped," Jinwoo said. "Rivals of my father trying to use me as leverage. They held me for 3 days before my father's people found me." He stopped, his hands tightening around his water glass. "They didn't treat me well during those 3 days." Naomi's heart clenched. "I'm sorry," she said. "That must have been terrifying." "It changed me," Jinwoo said. "Before that, I thought I could live in both worlds. Be my father's son when necessary, but mostly exist in my own life, my architecture practice, my normal activities. After." He shook his head. "I couldn't do normal anymore. Couldn't handle restaurants or concerts or anywhere with crowds and noise and too many unpredictable variables. My father sees it as weakness." "It's not weakness," Naomi said firmly. "It's trauma." That's a normal response to what you went through. Jinwoo looked at her with something like wonder. You see me, he said softly. Not my father's shadow. Not a victim. Not someone to be afraid of or pitted. Just me. Before Naomi could respond, she caught movement from the corner of her eye. A man sitting alone 3 tables away, Asian, probably in his 40s, wearing a leather jacket that looked out of place in Celestine's elegant atmosphere. He'd been there for over an hour, nursing a single drink, and Naomi realized with a chill that he'd been watching their table the whole time. Jinwoo followed her gaze, and his expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Time for me to go, he said, already reaching for his wallet. Who is that? Naomi asked quietly. No one you need to worry about, Jinwoo said, but his tone suggested otherwise. He stood, left cash on the table, and looked down at Naomi. What time do you get off tonight? Around 11, Naomi said. Why? I'd like to walk you to your car, Jinwoo said. Make sure you get there safely. I'll be fine, Naomi started, but Jinwoo shook his head. Please, he said. Humor me. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she didn't need protection, but something in his expression stopped her. Okay, she said. Jinwoo was waiting in the employee parking garage when Naomi finished her closing duties. He leaned against a concrete pillar, his phone in his hand, but he looked up immediately when she emerged from the elevator. Your car? He asked. Naomi led him to her aging Honda, suddenly self-conscious about the dented bumper and faded paint next to whatever luxury vehicle he probably drove. Jinwoo didn't seem to notice. He waited while she unlocked the door, then said, Where do you live? I'd like to follow you home. Just to be safe. That's really not necessary, Naomi protested. Naomi, Jinwoo said, and there was something urgent in his voice now. That man in the restaurant tonight. He works for people who might want to hurt me. And if they think you matter to me, they might try to hurt you too. The words hung in the cool garage air. Do I? Naomi asked. Matter to you? Jinwoo held her gaze. Yes, he said simply. More than I probably should let you. Naomi's heart hammered against her ribs. She should say no. Should tell him to leave her alone, to stop coming to the restaurant, to stay out of her life. Instead, she heard herself giving him her address in Koreatown, watching him nod, and walk to a sleek black sedan parked nearby. The drive took 20 minutes through late-night LA traffic. Naomi kept checking her rearview mirror, seeing Jinwoo's headlights a steady presence behind her. When she pulled into her apartment building's parking lot, he parked beside her and got out. This is me, Naomi said, gesturing at the rundown building with its peeling paint and barred windows. Not exactly a penthouse. Jinwoo barely glanced at the building. Can I walk you to your door? They climbed the external staircase to the 3rd floor, their footsteps echoing in the quiet night. Naomi's apartment was at the end of the hallway, a studio she'd lived in for 3 years because the rent was cheap and the landlord didn't ask too many questions. She unlocked the door but didn't open it, turning instead to face Jinwoo. Thank you for following me home, she said, though I still think it was unnecessary. Better safe, Jinwoo said. He seemed reluctant to leave, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders slightly hunched against the night chill. Naomi, can I ask you something? Okay, she said. Would you have dinner with me? Not at Celestine where you're working. Just dinner. You and me. On your next night off. Naomi's breath caught. She knew what Maya would say, what her mother would say, what any sensible person would say. I know who your father is, she said quietly. I can't get involved in that world. My brother died because of gang violence. I swore I'd never let that darkness touch my life again. I'm not my father, Jinwoo said, and there was something almost desperate in his voice. And I'm not asking for your life, Naomi. I'm asking for one dinner. A chance to spend time with you away from the restaurant, where we can just be 2 people getting to know each other. That's all. Naomi knew she should say no. Knew this was a terrible idea. Knew she was walking toward exactly the kind of danger she'd promised herself she'd avoid. But when she looked at Jinwoo, she didn't see a mobster's son. She saw the man who'd been vulnerable with her about his trauma, who loved poetry and architecture, who looked at her like she was something precious. Okay, she heard herself say. One dinner. The smile that broke across Jinwoo's face was worth every warning bell going off in her head. He pulled out his phone. Give me your number. I'll text you details. She recited her number and watched him save it, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. A moment later, her phone buzzed with a message. Just my name, so you'll have my contact, he said. Naomi nodded, suddenly shy. I should go in. Early shift tomorrow. Good night, Naomi, Jinwoo said. Sleep well. He waited until she'd gone inside and locked the door before she heard his footsteps retreating down the hallway. Naomi leaned against the closed door, her heart racing, wondering what she'd just agreed to. She moved to the window that overlooked the parking lot, wanting to watch him drive away. But when she looked down, her breath caught. Jinwoo's car was pulling out, but there, parked across the street under a broken streetlight, sat a black sedan with tinted windows. It hadn't been there when she'd arrived home, and even as she watched, she could see the faint glow of someone sitting inside, watching her building. Naomi stepped back from the window, her hand pressed to her racing heart. What had she gotten herself into? Jinwoo picked Naomi up on Thursday evening, her next scheduled night off. She'd changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple black dress that felt appropriate without trying too hard, then spent an extra 20 minutes on her hair and makeup while berating herself for caring so much. It's just dinner, she'd told her reflection. One dinner with someone you barely know. Don't make it into something it's not. But when she opened her apartment door and saw Jinwoo standing in the hallway, all her careful reasoning evaporated. He wore dark slacks and a charcoal button-down that emphasized his lean frame, his hair styled perfectly, and the look in his dark eyes when they met hers made her stomach flutter. You look beautiful, he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her cheeks warm. Thank you, Naomi managed. You look nice too. They walked down to the parking lot where Jinwoo's car waited, a sleek black sedan that was probably worth more than Naomi made in 5 years. He opened the passenger door for her, a gesture that felt old-fashioned and oddly charming, and she slid into butter-soft leather seats. The interior smelled expensive, all subtle cologne and new car, and Naomi tried not to feel completely out of her depth. Jinwoo drove with calm competence through the early evening traffic, heading toward downtown. Where are we going? Naomi asked. A place I think you'll like, Jinwoo said. Quiet, private, good food. I wanted somewhere we could actually talk without interruption. No crowds, Naomi said, understanding. Jinwoo glanced at her, something warm in his expression. No crowds, he agreed. They drove through the glittering heart of Los Angeles as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jinwoo asked about her day, about her studies, easy questions that let Naomi relax into conversation. She found herself telling him about the practice anatomy quiz she'd taken that morning, how she'd gotten a perfect score and felt ridiculously proud of herself. He listened with genuine interest, asked follow-up questions that showed he was actually paying attention, and by the time they pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a gleaming high-rise, Naomi had almost forgotten to be nervous. The elevator took them to the 32nd floor, where the doors opened directly into an elegant rooftop restaurant. The space was intimate, maybe 10 tables total, all positioned to take advantage of floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the LA skyline. Soft lighting, minimal decor, the kind of understated luxury that came from not needing to prove anything. The maitre d' greeted Jinwoo by name and led them to a private table in the corner, the city spread out below them like scattered diamonds. This is incredible, Naomi breathed, looking out at the view. I'm glad you like it, Jinwoo said. The chef is a friend. He'll prepare something special for us. They ordered wine, a crisp white that Jinwoo said paired well with seafood, and Naomi let herself sink into the evening. The first course arrived, some kind of delicate fish preparation that melted on her tongue, and they talked. Really talked. Not the brief snatches of conversation stolen during her breaks at Celestine, but real, sustained dialogue. Naomi found herself sharing things she rarely spoke about, her dreams of becoming a trauma nurse, her mother's quiet grief that never fully healed, her own fear that she'd never accomplish anything meaningful with her life. You want to help people, Jinwoo said. That's more meaningful than most people's ambitions. I just don't want to feel helpless anymore, Naomi admitted. When Danny died, when my brother died, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't save him. I couldn't even get to the hospital before he was gone. If I'd had medical training, if I'd been there, maybe. She trailed off, surprised at the emotion rising in her throat. She'd learned to talk about Danny without crying, had practiced the careful distance that let her mention him without falling apart. But something about Jinwoo's patient attention cracked her usual defenses. How old was he? Jinwoo asked gently. 19, Naomi said. 3 years ago, he was just standing outside a convenience store when rival gangs started shooting. Wrong place, wrong time. He wasn't in a gang, wasn't involved in anything dangerous. He was just a kid buying chips. I'm sorry, Jinwoo said, and unlike most people who said those words, he seemed to actually mean them. That shouldn't have happened to him. Or to you. Naomi took a shaky breath. That's why I can't be involved with your world. I know you're not violent yourself, I believe that. But the people around you are. Your father is. And I can't go through that again. I can't lose someone else to gang violence. I understand, Jinwoo said quietly. If I could walk away from it all, I would. But it's not that simple. Why not? Naomi asked. You have your architecture practice. You're successful on your own. Why can't you just leave? Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the stem of his wine glass. 5 years ago, he said finally, I thought I could do exactly that. I'd built my business, established myself separately from my father's organization. I was going to tell him I was done, that I wanted no part of the family operations. Then I was kidnapped. Naomi remembered him mentioning this before, but she could tell from his expression that there was more to the story. What happened? She asked. Jinwoo's jaw tightened. A rival Chinese triad wanted to pressure my father into giving up territory. They took me from my apartment building parking garage. 3 men, guns, very professional. They held me in a warehouse for 3 days. He paused, and Naomi could see him gathering himself. They wanted information about my father's operations. When I wouldn't give it to them, they made sure I understood the consequences of loyalty. He didn't elaborate, but Naomi could imagine. The scars might not be visible, but she could see the ones carved into his psyche. I'm sorry, she said. That's unimaginable. My father's people found me on the 3rd day, Jinwoo continued. Killed most of my captors, drove the rest underground. Saved my life. And after that, how could I walk away? I owed him. Still owe him. He pulled me out of hell, and the price is staying connected to his world whether I want to or not. But you said he sees your panic attacks as weakness, Naomi pointed out. That doesn't sound like a father who saved you out of love. Jinwoo's smile was bitter. My father loves me in his way, but he also sees me as a disappointment. His only son, and I can't even handle a crowded restaurant without falling apart. I'm supposed to take over his organization someday, lead hundreds of men, make life and death decisions. Instead, I design buildings and have panic attacks. You survived torture, Naomi said firmly. 3 days of hell, and you didn't break. That's not weakness, Jinwoo. That's incredible strength. The panic attacks are just your body's way of processing trauma. It doesn't make you broken. My father doesn't see it that way, Jinwoo said. Then your father is wrong, Naomi replied. You're one of the strongest people I've met. You survived something horrible. You built a legitimate career despite your family's expectations, and you're still kind and thoughtful and good. That takes more courage than anything your father's world requires. Jinwoo looked at her like she'd said something profound instead of just obvious truth. How do you do that? He asked softly. Do what? Make me feel like maybe I'm not as damaged as I think I am. Naomi reached across the table, barely thinking about it, and covered his hand with hers. You're not damaged, she said. You're healing. There's a difference. His hand turned under hers, their fingers intertwining. The touch sent electricity up her arm, awareness flooding through her. Jinwoo's eyes had darkened, his gaze dropping to her lips, and Naomi felt her breath catch. The restaurant faded away, the city lights blurring into background noise, and there was only Jinwoo leaning slightly toward her, his thumb stroking the back of her hand, his intention clear in every line of his body. Naomi found herself leaning forward too, drawn by something she didn't want to name, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was a terrible idea. She knew it was a terrible idea. But when Jinwoo's free hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle and questioning, she couldn't remember why she was supposed to resist. His phone shattered the moment, buzzing insistently against the table. Jinwoo closed his eyes briefly, frustration flickering across his face, but he pulled back and checked the screen. His expression changed instantly, all warmth draining away into something hard and dangerous. I need to take this, he said, already standing. He stepped away from the table, phone pressed to his ear, and Naomi watched his body language shift into something she'd never seen before. All his usual careful gentleness vanished, replaced by the kind of cold command that came from a lifetime in his father's world. He spoke in rapid Korean, his voice low but intense, and even without understanding the words, Naomi could hear the anger underlying them. When he returned to the table, his face was grim. "We need to go," he said. "Now." "What's wrong?" Naomi asked, already reaching for her purse. Jinwoo threw cash on the table, far more than their meal could have cost. "I'll explain in the car." "Please, Naomi, we need to move." The urgency in his voice got her moving. They rushed to the elevator, Jinwoo's hand at the small of her back, protective and tense. In the car, he drove faster than before, his jaw clenched, checking the mirrors constantly. Naomi's stomach knotted with growing dread. "What happened?" she asked again. "Someone shot at my car," Jinwoo said flatly. "About an hour ago. Outside your apartment building." The words didn't make sense at first. Naomi stared at him, trying to process. "Your car? The one you drove tonight?" "No. My other car. The one I usually drive." Jinwoo's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "It was parked on the street near your building. I've been leaving it there the past few nights, having my security watch your place, making sure you were safe. Someone knew to look for it." "Why would someone shoot at your car?" Naomi asked, but even as she said it, understanding was dawning with cold horror. "Because they're sending a message," Jinwoo said. "They know about you, Naomi. They know you matter to me. And now they're trying to scare me, or hurt you, or both." "Who?" Naomi demanded. "Who's they?" "The same Chinese triad that took me 5 years ago," Jinwoo said. "They've been watching us. That man at Celestine last week. The sedan outside your building. They've been gathering intelligence, and now they're making their move." Naomi felt ice flood her veins. This couldn't be happening. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of, exactly what she'd tried to avoid by staying away from Jinwoo's world. But she hadn't stayed away, had she? She'd let him into her life, let herself care about him, and now she was right back in the crosshairs of the same violence that had killed her brother. They pulled onto her street, and Naomi's breath caught. Police cars lined the curb, their lights painting everything in red and blue. Neighbors clustered on the sidewalk, talking in worried groups. Yellow crime scene tape blocked off the entrance to her building. "Oh God," Naomi whispered. Jinwoo parked as close as he could, and they got out, walking quickly toward her building. A police officer stopped them at the tape, asking what business they had there. "I live here," Naomi said, her voice shaking. "Apartment 3F. The officer's expression shifted to sympathy. "You'll want to talk to Detective Chin. He's coordinating the investigation." A plainclothes detective emerged from the building, probably in his 50s with tired eyes and a rumpled suit. "You're the tenant of 3F? He asked Naomi. "Yes, what happened?" "Someone fired multiple shots at your door about an hour ago," the detective said. "Fortunately, you weren't home. Neighbors called it in. We found shell casings, bullet holes. You have any idea who might want to hurt you?" Naomi couldn't speak. Jinwoo stepped forward, his voice calm and controlled. "This is likely connected to me," he said. "I'm Jinwoo Kong. My family has enemies who may be targeting people close to me." The detective's expression hardened. "Kong," he repeated. "I see. Miss, do you understand what you've gotten yourself involved with?" "She didn't choose this," Jinwoo said before Naomi could respond. "She's an innocent. I'll make sure she's protected." "Right," the detective said skeptically. "Because the Kong family has such a great track record with protecting innocents." He turned to Naomi. "Miss, you can't stay here tonight. It's not safe. Do you have somewhere else you can go?" Naomi's mind went blank. Her mother lived an hour away in a rough neighborhood that was barely safer than this one. Her friends from work shared cramped apartments with roommates. She had maybe $800 in her bank account, not enough for a hotel for more than a few nights. "She's coming with me," Jinwoo said. "I have security, resources to keep her safe." The detective looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find grounds to. "Fine," he said. "But miss, you understand you're making a choice here. Once you're under Kong protection, you're part of their world. That's not something you can easily walk back from." "I understand," Naomi heard herself say, though she understood nothing except that someone had shot at her home and she had nowhere else to go. Jinwoo escorted her upstairs, past the curious neighbors and the officers processing the scene. Her apartment door was riddled with bullet holes, the wood splintered, the deadbolt mangled. Inside, everything was exactly as she'd left it, but now it felt violated, unsafe. She packed a bag with shaking hands, throwing in clothes and toiletries and her nursing textbooks, moving on autopilot while her mind struggled to catch up with reality. This is exactly why I can't be involved with you, she said as she zipped the duffel bag. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Jinwoo stood in the doorway of her tiny studio, his expression tormented. I know, he said. You were right to be afraid. I should have stayed away from you. But I was selfish. I wanted to know you, spend time with you, and now you're paying the price for my selfishness. Naomi wanted to scream at him, to rage at the unfairness of it all. 3 years staying clear of anything remotely connected to gang violence. 3 years building a safe, clean life, and one act of compassion had dragged her right back into the nightmare. But when she looked at Jinwoo's face, she saw genuine anguish there. He hadn't wanted this. He'd tried to protect her. It wasn't his fault his world had tentacles that reached everywhere. Too late now, she said, hoisting the bag. They already know about me. So what happens next? You come with me, Jinwoo said. To my place. I have security, good security. No one will get to you there. And we figure out how to end this threat permanently. You can do that? Naomi asked. Just end it. My father can, Jinwoo said grimly. One phone call, and he'll go to war with the Triad. But that would mean bodies in the streets, innocent people caught in the crossfire. I want to handle this differently if I can. How? I don't know yet, Jinwoo admitted. But I won't let them hurt you because of me. That I promise. They left the apartment, Naomi taking one last look at the violated door, the small space that had been her sanctuary. The detective was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. We'll keep the building under watch tonight, he said. But you really should consider leaving LA entirely until this is resolved. I'll keep her safe, Jinwoo said with quiet certainty. They drove through the city in tense silence, Jinwoo checking the mirrors constantly, taking random turns that Naomi suspected were designed to spot any tails. Finally, they pulled into an underground garage beneath a gleaming tower in downtown LA, one of the newest and most expensive buildings in the city. Jinwoo's parking space was near a private elevator, and they took it directly to the top floor. The penthouse doors opened into a space that took Naomi's breath away despite her emotional turmoil. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire living area, showcasing 360 degrees of Los Angeles spread out in glittering splendor. Modern furniture in neutral tones, hardwood floors, art on the walls that was probably worth more than Naomi's student loans. The kitchen gleamed with professional-grade appliances. It was stunning and enormous and utterly isolating, a fortress in the sky. Guest room is this way, Jinwoo said, leading her down a hallway. He opened a door to reveal a spacious bedroom with its own bathroom, decorated in soft grays and whites. You'll be comfortable here. If you need anything, I'm just down the hall. Naomi set her bag on the bed and turned to face him. How long? She asked. How long do I have to hide here? However long it takes, Jinwoo said. I'm sorry, Naomi. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. Should have known they were watching. You said you had people watching my building, Naomi pointed out. You were trying to protect me. Not well enough, Jinwoo said bitterly. You showed me compassion, and I've destroyed your life. Naomi felt her anger drain away, replaced by exhaustion and a strange sense of acceptance. My life isn't destroyed, she said. I'm scared and angry, and I don't know what happens next. But I'm alive. That counts for something. Jinwoo looked at her with something like wonder. How are you so calm? I'm not calm, Naomi said. I'm terrified. But falling apart won't help anything. She met his eyes. I don't blame you, Jinwoo. I made the choice to spend time with you. I knew the risks, at least intellectually. This isn't your fault. It is, though, Jinwoo said. And I'll fix it. I promise you that. He left her alone in the guest room, and Naomi sank onto the bed, finally letting the emotions she'd been holding back wash over her. She'd been shot at. Someone had tried to kill her, or at least send a message that they could kill her whenever they wanted. She was hiding in a penthouse owned by a mob boss's son, under protection she'd never asked for, trapped in exactly the kind of situation she'd spent 3 years trying to avoid. But she was also alive. Jinwoo was trying to protect her. And despite everything, despite the fear and anger and chaos, some small part of her was glad to be here instead of alone in that violated apartment. Naomi pressed her hand to her racing heart and wondered what she'd become. Naomi woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and spent several disoriented seconds trying to remember where she was. The guest room. Jinwoo's penthouse. The shooting. Reality crashed back and she sat up, her heart already racing with residual fear from the night before. The smell of coffee drifted through the door she'd left slightly ajar, followed by the quiet sounds of someone moving around in the kitchen. Naomi checked her phone and found it was almost 9 in the morning, later than she usually slept. 3 missed calls from her mother, 2 from Maya, and a text from Gregory asking if she was okay and telling her to take all the time she needed. News of the shooting had clearly spread. She showered quickly in the guest bathroom, marveling at the water pressure and the heated tile floors, then dressed in jeans and a sweater from her hastily packed bag. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Jinwoo in the kitchen, wearing dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, standing at the stove. The sight of him cooking was so unexpected that Naomi stopped in the doorway. "Good morning," Jinwoo said, glancing over his shoulder. "I wasn't sure what you liked for breakfast, so I made options." The counter held an array of food that looked like it belonged in a restaurant spread. Traditional Korean dishes, juk and kimchi and grilled fish, alongside American breakfast staples, scrambled eggs, and toast and bacon. A French press sat beside 2 coffee mugs, steam rising gently. It was domestic and thoughtful and completely surreal given the circumstances. "You didn't have to do all this," Naomi said, moving into the kitchen. "I wanted to," Jinwoo replied. "Besides, cooking helps me think. Sit, please. Tell me how you take your coffee." They settled at the breakfast bar, Naomi accepting a mug of coffee with cream and sugar, Jinwoo pouring his own black. She sampled the food, finding everything perfectly prepared, and tried to wrap her mind around this version of Jinwoo. Last night he'd been protective and intense, coordinating with police and security. This morning, he was making her breakfast like they were a normal couple starting a normal day. "Did you sleep?" Naomi asked, noticing the faint shadows under his eyes. "Some," Jinwoo said. "I had calls to make. My security team needed briefing." As if summoned by the mention, the private elevator chimed, and 3 men emerged into the penthouse. Jinwoo didn't seem surprised. "Naomi, these are my head of security and his team," he said. "They need to brief us on the situation." The lead man was in his 40s, built like a tank, with sharp eyes that took in everything. His name was Minjun, and he spoke with the clipped efficiency of someone used to delivering bad news. "The Chinese triad is making their move," he said without preamble. "Leader's name is Wei Chun. He's been trying to muscle into your father's territory for 6 months. Taking you was meant to draw your father into a confrontation." "By shooting at my apartment?" Naomi asked, her voice sharper than intended. Minjun looked at her directly. "By showing your father that his son's attachments are vulnerabilities. Chin knows Park Kang-dae won't negotiate or show weakness. But if Jinwoo's woman is in danger, maybe Jinwoo acts rashly. Maybe he makes a mistake that gives Chin an opening." The clinical assessment made Naomi's skin crawl, but she appreciated the honesty. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we keep you both safe while we determine Chin's next move," Minjun said. "Mississippi Park, you cannot return to your apartment or go to work. The triad knows both locations. Jinwoo, your father wants a meeting this afternoon." Jinwoo's jaw tightened. "Tell him I'll be there." After the security team left, Naomi called her manager to explain she wouldn't be coming in for the foreseeable future. Gregory was understanding, told her job would be waiting whenever she felt safe enough to return, but Naomi could hear the doubt in his voice. When you get involved with people like the Kangs, you don't just walk back into your old life. She called her mother next, that conversation much harder. Her mother cried, demanded to know how Naomi had gotten mixed up with gangsters, begged her to leave LA entirely. Naomi tried to explain about Jinwoo, about the compassion she'd shown that had started everything, but her mother only heard the danger. "You sound just like Danny," her mother said through tears. "He always thought he could be around those people and not get hurt. Look how that turned out." The words cut deep, but Naomi couldn't argue with them. She promised her mother she'd be careful, that she'd call every day, and hung up feeling hollowed out. Jinwoo had retreated to a home office, giving her privacy for the calls, and when Naomi went looking for him, she found him behind a massive desk, architectural plans spread across its surface, talking on a video call about load-bearing structures and design modifications. He glanced up when she entered, mouthed an apology, and gestured for her to sit. Naomi settled into a leather chair and watched him work. This was yet another version of Jinwoo. Confident, articulate, completely in his element as he discussed cantilever designs and sustainable materials. The person on the other end of the call clearly respected him, deferred to his expertise. This wasn't the mob boss's disappointing son. This was a successful architect running a legitimate business. The contrast between this Jin-woo and the one who'd had a panic attack in a crowded restaurant was startling. When the call ended, Jin-woo leaned back in his chair. "Sorry about that," he said. "Project deadline coming up and the client is anxious." "Don't apologize," Naomi said. "It's impressive. Your work, I mean. You've built something real, separate from your father." "It's the only thing that's truly mine," Jin-woo admitted. "Everything else in my life has his fingerprints on it. But this, the buildings I design, those are just mine." They spent the morning in a strange sort of domesticity. Jin-woo worked while Naomi attempted to study. Her nursing textbooks spread on the dining table, but she couldn't concentrate. Her mind kept circling back to the bullet holes in her door, the fear in her mother's voice, the cold assessment that she'd become a vulnerability to be exploited. By noon, she'd read the same paragraph 7 times without absorbing a single word. Jin-woo emerged from his office and found her staring blankly at the textbook. "Come on," he said. "You need a break." He led her to the living room and put on a Korean drama, something light and romantic, and they sat together on the couch. Not quite touching, but close enough that Naomi was hyper-aware of every small movement, every shift that brought them fractionally nearer. The tension from their almost kiss at dinner seemed to have followed them here, intensifying in the forced proximity. Days passed in this strange, suspended reality. Jin-woo worked from home to stay with Naomi, emerging from his office for meals and breaks. They developed routines. Morning coffee together while he read the news and she attempted to study. Lunch conversations about everything and nothing. Evenings when Jin-woo would cook, insisting that he enjoyed it and that Naomi was his guest. They'd eat dinner talking for hours, about her nursing ambitions and his architectural philosophy, about books and music and childhood memories. After dinner, they'd watch movies or Jin-woo would play classical music while Naomi curled up with her textbooks, the gentle piano filling the penthouse. The physical tension built with every passing day. Accidental touches when they both reached for the coffee pot. Jin-woo's hand at the small of her back when he guided her to the table. The brush of fingers when passing plates. Naomi caught him watching her sometimes, his dark eyes intense and wanting, and she knew he could see the same desire reflected in her own gaze. But he maintained careful distance, always stopping before casual contact could become something more. On the 4th morning, Jin-woo emerged from his bedroom to find Naomi already awake, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below. "I got you something," he said. He handed her a shopping bag filled with new textbooks, study guides, and practice tests for the nursing school entrance exam. The materials were comprehensive and expensive, exactly what she needed. "I noticed you'd only brought a few books," Jin-woo explained. "I thought you might want more complete study resources." Naomi felt unexpected tears prick her eyes. This was thoughtful beyond anything she'd expected, a gesture that showed he'd been paying attention to what mattered to her. "Thank you," she managed. "This is incredibly kind. You're putting your life on hold because of me," Jin-woo said. "The least I can do is make sure you can still pursue your dreams." That evening, Jin-woo taught her how to make bulgogi, patiently guiding her through each step, his body close behind hers as he showed her how to slice the meat properly. Naomi was acutely aware of his proximity, the heat of him, the way his breath stirred her hair when he leaned in to check her work. When their hands touched reaching for the same utensil, electricity shot through her, and Jinwoo's fingers lingered against hers for just a moment too long before pulling away. They were cleaning up after dinner, Naomi washing dishes while Jinwoo dried, when the private elevator chimed. Jinwoo's entire body went tense. He glanced at his phone, then set down the dish towel. "My father," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I should have warned you he might stop by." The man who stepped out of the elevator commanded attention instantly. Park Kang-dae was probably in his mid-60s, not tall but powerfully built, with iron gray hair and eyes like black ice. He wore an expensive suit with the casual confidence of someone who'd never questioned their right to occupy space. 2 bodyguards flanked him, stone-faced and alert. "Father," Jinwoo said, his voice carefully neutral. "This is unexpected." Park Kang-dae's gaze swept the penthouse, lingering on Naomi with cold assessment. "This is her." He asked in English, his accent slight. The waitress who has caused so much trouble? Naomi felt her spine straighten. She's right here and can speak for herself, she said. My name is Naomi Park. The older man's eyebrows rose fractionally. Park, he repeated. Korean? Korean American, Naomi confirmed. Third generation. Park Kang-dae moved further into the penthouse, his bodyguards taking up positions near the elevator. He circled Naomi like a predator assessing prey. What do you want from my son? He asked bluntly. Nothing, Naomi said. I didn't ask to be here. I didn't ask for any of this. Yet here you are, living in his home, under his protection, Park said. That makes you his weakness. Do you understand what that means? It means your enemies will try to use me against him, Naomi replied. I understand that perfectly. I've already had my home shot up because of it. And yet you stay, Park observed. Why? What hold do you have over Jinwoo? Father, Jinwoo interjected, his voice tight. That's enough. Park ignored him, keeping his attention fixed on Naomi. My son has never brought a woman to his home before. Never shown interest in anyone seriously. Now suddenly he's willing to risk war with the Chinese triad to protect a waitress. I want to know why. Naomi met the older man's cold gaze without flinching. Your son showed me who he really is, she said. Not the Kang heir or the damaged victim or the disappointment you apparently see when you look at him. Just Jinwoo. A good man trying to build something meaningful despite the weight of expectations he never asked for. Maybe if you saw him that way too, you'd understand why I care about him. The silence that followed was absolute. Jinwoo stared at Naomi with something like shock. The bodyguards shifted uncomfortably. Park Kang-dae's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes that might have been surprise. You think I see my son as a disappointment? Park said finally. I think you see him as weak because he has panic attacks, Naomi said. But you're wrong. He survived 3 days of torture that would have broken most people. He built a successful career separate from your empire. He's kind and thoughtful and strong in ways you don't value. That's not weakness. That's courage. Park turned to Jinwoo. She is steel, he said. I didn't expect that. Naomi is full of surprises, Jinwoo said quietly. The older man walked to the windows, looking out at the city spread below. Waitress won't stop, he said. He sees Jinwoo as the weak point in my organization. Attacking him, attacking his woman, it's all designed to force my hand. To make me look vulnerable. Then deal with Chun, Jinwoo said. End the threat. Park turned back, his expression hard. If I deal with Chun, it means war. Bodies in the streets. Federal attention we don't need. Is that what you want? I want Naomi safe, Jinwoo said. Whatever it takes. Park looked between them, calculation clear in his eyes. I'll handle Chun, he said finally. But you need to understand something, both of you. Once you're in this world, you're in it completely. There's no going back to normal life. No pretending you're not part of this. He fixed his gaze on Naomi. Are you prepared for that, Mississippi Park? Naomi thought about her apartment, her job, the simple life she'd built so carefully. All of it felt impossibly distant now, like it belonged to a different person. No, she admitted. I'm not prepared. But I'm here anyway, and I won't abandon Jinwoo just because it's hard or dangerous. Park nodded slowly. Good, he said. Weakness I could exploit. Loyalty is more useful. He moved toward the elevator, his bodyguards falling into step. I'll take care of Chun. You keep her safe, Jinwoo. Don't make me regret allowing this attachment. After they left, Jinwoo sank onto the couch, his hands shaking slightly. I can't believe you spoke to him like that, he said. No one speaks to Park Kang-dae that way. Someone should, Naomi said, sitting beside him. He's wrong about you. Jinwoo turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his expression made her breath catch. My whole life, he said, I've tried to earn his respect. Tried to be what he needed, what the organization needed. And in 5 minutes you defended me better than I've ever defended myself. Because I see the truth, Naomi said. You don't have to earn my respect or prove your worth. You're already enough exactly as you are. Jinwoo reached out, his hand cupping her cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. I want you so much it scares me, he said, his voice rough. But you deserve better than this life, Naomi. Better than me and my broken pieces and the constant danger. What if I get to decide what I deserve? Naomi asked, leaning into his touch. What if I choose this? Choose you, even knowing what it means. He leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers, his breath warm on her lips. She could feel his restraint, the war between desire and his misguided need to protect her from himself. Naomi closed the distance, her hand sliding into his hair, and Jinwoo made a sound low in his throat that might have been surrender. His phone buzzed, harsh and intrusive. Jinwoo pulled back with a curse, checking the screen. His expression shifted to fury. What? Naomi asked. Chin's men were spotted near your mother's house, Jinwoo said, already dialing. 2 cars, watching the street. He's escalating, threatening your family now. Terror flooded through Naomi. My mother, she whispered. Jinwoo was already talking rapidly in Korean, issuing orders. When he ended the call, his expression was grimly determined. I'm sending a team to protect her, he said. 4 of my best people. They'll keep her safe. For how long? Naomi demanded. She can't live under protection forever. She has work, her own life. Until my father deals with Chun, Jinwoo said. I won't let them hurt your family, Naomi. I promise you that. Naomi watched him make more calls, coordinating security and counter-surveillance. His entire demeanor transformed into something commanding and dangerous. This was the side of Jinwoo that belonged to his father's world, the capability and ruthlessness that came from a lifetime in organized crime. It should have frightened her. Instead, watching him use that power to protect her mother, Naomi felt something shift inside her. This was his life. Constant threats, endless chess games with dangerous people, violence always lurking at the edges. But he used his power to protect, to keep people safe. There was something honorable in that, even if the methods came from a world she'd spent years trying to avoid. When Jinwoo finally ended his calls, Naomi crossed to him and wrapped her arms around his waist. He held her tightly, his chin resting on top of her head. I'll fix this, he murmured into her hair. I'll keep you and your mother safe. I swear it. I know you will, Naomi said, and realized she meant it. Whatever else Jinwoo was, whatever darkness lived in his world, she trusted him completely. That should have terrified her even more than the threats. Instead, it felt like coming home. 2 weeks passed in the strange sanctuary of Jinwoo's penthouse. 2 weeks of careful domesticity and unbearable tension. 2 weeks of almost touches and interrupted moments and desire that built like pressure behind a dam. Naomi's mother was safe under 24-hour protection. Her apartment remained cordoned off, uninhabitable. Her job at Celestine felt like it belonged to someone else's life. Her entire world had narrowed to this glass tower and the man who inhabited it with her. Jinwoo maintained his careful distance even as the air between them crackled with want. He worked in his office during the day while Naomi studied, both of them pretending normalcy. They cooked together in the evenings, their bodies hyper-aware of every proximity, every accidental brush of hands. They watched movies on the couch with calculated space between them that felt more charged than touching. At night, Naomi lay alone in the guest room and listened to Jinwoo move around in his bedroom down the hall, both of them awake and wanting and keeping their careful boundaries. The waiting was destroying her. Not just the fear of Chin's next move, though that hummed constantly beneath her thoughts, but the waiting for Jinwoo to stop being so noble, so determined to protect her from his own feelings. She saw the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, the hunger and longing he tried to hide. She felt the tension in his body when they stood close, the way his breathing changed when she accidentally touched him. Naomi couldn't keep pretending she didn't want him, couldn't keep lying to herself that this was just gratitude or circumstantial attachment. She'd fallen for Jinwoo completely, irrevocably, against all logic and self-preservation. And she was done waiting. It was past midnight on the 14th night when Naomi gave up on sleep. She padded into the dark kitchen wearing sleep shorts and an oversized t-shirt, intending to make tea. Jinwoo was already there, standing at the counter in low-slung sweatpants and nothing else, his lean torso illuminated by the city lights streaming through the windows. He turned when he heard her approach, and even in the dim light, she could see the tension in every line of his body. Couldn't sleep either? Naomi asked. Not much point in trying anymore, Jinwoo said. His voice was rough, tired. I just lie there thinking. About what? You, he admitted. Always you. The honesty in those 2 words cracked something open in Naomi's chest. I'm terrified of your world, she said, moving closer. Every instinct I have says I should run as far from this as possible. But I'm more terrified of losing you, Jinwoo. That scares me more than Chan or your father or any of it. Jinwoo closed his eyes briefly. You should run, he said. You should get as far from me as possible and build the safe life you deserve. But I won't, Naomi said. Because what I deserve is the right to choose my own life. And I choose this. I choose you. She watched his control fracture. His hands gripped the counter edge, knuckles white, his breathing harsh in the quiet kitchen. Naomi, he said, and her name sounded like prayer and warning combined. If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. I don't want to go back, Naomi said. She closed the distance between them, her hand coming up to rest over his racing heart. I love you. I've loved you since you looked at me like I mattered, like my compassion meant something. I don't want to keep pretending I don't. Jinwoo made a sound somewhere between laugh and sob. I love you, he said, his voice breaking. I've loved you since you showed me compassion when no one else would, since you saw me instead of my father's shadow or my broken pieces. You make me believe I could be whole again. Then stop protecting me from yourself, Naomi said. Stop trying to be noble. I know what I'm choosing. Jinwoo's restraint shattered. He pulled her against him, one hand cupping her face, the other sliding into her hair, and kissed her with weeks of pent-up longing. Naomi melted into him, her arms winding around his neck, finally feeling his skin against hers. The kiss was intense and desperate, both of them pouring everything they'd been holding back into it. Jinwoo broke away just enough to breathe, his forehead pressed to hers. Are you sure? He asked. Because once I have you, I won't be able to let you go. I'm counting on it, Naomi whispered. He kissed her again, slower this time, but no less hungry, then lifted her easily. She wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her toward his bedroom, their mouths never separating. Jinwoo laid her gently on his bed, the city lights through the windows painting them both in silver and shadow. Tell me if you want me to stop, he murmured against her lips. At any point, just tell me. I won't want you to stop, Naomi said, but the care in his voice made her love him even more. Jinwoo explored her slowly, reverently, like she was something precious he was afraid of breaking. His hands traced her curves over her clothes before sliding beneath, warm palms against her skin making her gasp. Naomi pulled at his shoulders, wanting him closer, wanting to feel all of him. When he finally removed her shirt, he paused to just look at her, his dark eyes full of wonder. You're beautiful, he said. So beautiful it hurts. Naomi reached for him, pulling him down to her, and they lost themselves in each other. Jinwoo was tender and careful, checking in with her constantly, making sure she was okay, that she wanted this. His gentleness undid her more than passion would have. Every touch carried emotion, every kiss spoke of devotion. When they finally came together completely, Naomi felt something click into place in her soul, like she'd been incomplete before this moment. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Jinwoo's arms wrapped around her, her head on his chest listening to his heartbeat slow. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder, and Naomi had never felt safer or more cherished. I meant what I said, Jinwoo murmured into her hair. I love you, Naomi. More than I thought I could love anyone. I love you too, Naomi said. Despite all the logical reasons I shouldn't. Jinwoo huffed a quiet laugh. Logic is overrated anyway. They talked for hours in the dark, about everything and nothing, making plans and sharing dreams. Jinwoo spoke about places he wanted to take her, buildings he wanted to show her, a life he wanted to build with her. Naomi shared her hopes for nursing school, her determination to help people the way she wished someone had been able to help Danny. At some point they fell asleep wrapped around each other, peaceful and whole. Naomi woke to morning light, and Jinwoo propped on one elbow, watching her with soft eyes. Good morning, he said, brushing hair from her face. Morning, Naomi replied, suddenly shy despite everything they'd shared. No regrets? Jinwoo asked. None, Naomi assured him. You? Only that I waited so long, Jinwoo said, leaning down to kiss her gently. They made breakfast together, moving around the kitchen with new ease, touching casually now that the barriers had come down. Jinwoo pulled Naomi against his back while she scrambled eggs, his arms around her waist, his chin on her shoulder. She leaned into him, marveling at how natural it felt. Over coffee, Jinwoo grew serious. I've been thinking, he said. About us, about the future. I want to leave LA with you. Start over somewhere safe. Naomi set down her mug. Leave? You mean run away? Not run, Jinwoo said. Just build a life somewhere Chen can't reach us. Somewhere you can go to nursing school without bodyguards. Somewhere I can practice architecture without my father's organization hanging over everything. Just us, Naomi. A normal life. The image he painted was beautiful and tempting. Naomi wanted it desperately, wanted the safety and normalcy he described. But doubt crept in. Will your father let you walk away? She asked. Just leave the organization completely? Jinwoo's expression clouded. I don't know, he admitted. But I have to try. You've shown me there's another way to live. I want that with you. Before Naomi could respond, an alarm blared through the penthouse, harsh and urgent. Jinwoo was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor shifting. Stay here, he ordered, already moving toward a panel hidden in the wall. He pressed his palm to it, and it slid open, revealing weapons. He pulled out a gun with practiced ease, checking it with the kind of familiarity that came from extensive training. What's happening? Naomi asked, her heart hammering. Security breach, Jinwoo said grimly, his phone already in his hand. The building's been infiltrated. Gunfire erupted somewhere below them, muffled by distance, but unmistakable. Jinwoo grabbed Naomi's hand and pulled her toward the panic room he'd shown her on her first night, a reinforced space behind a false wall in his bedroom. Get in there, he said. Lock it from inside. Don't open it for anyone but me or Minjun. I'm not hiding while you're in danger, Naomi protested. You're not trained for this, Jinwoo said. Please, Naomi. I can't focus on stopping them if I'm worried about you. More gunfire, closer now. Jinwoo's phone buzzed with rapid messages. His face went hard. They're in the building. My team is engaging, but they've got numbers. He cupped Naomi's face urgently. I need you safe. Please. Naomi nodded, letting him guide her into the panic room. But the door had barely started to close when it exploded inward, someone hitting it with enough force to override the mechanism. A man burst through, Asian and heavily armed, his gun swinging toward Jinwoo. Jinwoo moved with speed that shocked Naomi. He tackled the intruder before the gun could fire, both of them crashing to the floor. They grappled viciously, the intruder trying to bring his weapon to bear while Jinwoo fought to disarm him. Naomi pressed herself against the wall, terror flooding through her as she watched Jinwoo fight for his life. The violence was brutal and efficient. Jinwoo got his hand on the gun and twisted it away, then followed with an elbow to the intruder's face that snapped his head back. Blood sprayed across the expensive hardwood. The man tried to pull a knife, but Jinwoo was faster, his own weapon coming up. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. The intruder went limp. Jinwoo stood over the body, breathing hard, blood spattered across his bare chest from the earlier blow. When he turned to Naomi, she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. The lethal capability he'd always kept hidden, the dangerous edge that came from his world. This was the part of Jinwoo that could kill without hesitation when necessary. This was the darkness he'd tried to protect her from seeing. More men poured into the penthouse. Jinwoo's security team, Minjun leading them, weapons drawn. The building is secure, Minjun reported. We got most of them. This one got past us somehow. He's dead, Jinwoo said flatly, gesturing to the body. What's the damage? 3 of ours wounded, none critical. 7 of Chin's men down, 2 escaped. Minjun's expression was grim. This was a coordinated assault, Jinwoo. They were trying to get to you, to her. This is Chin forcing the issue. Jinwoo helped Naomi out of the panic room, his hands gentle even though his body was still vibrating with adrenaline from the fight. Are you okay? He asked, his voice urgent with concern despite everything else happening. Naomi nodded mutely, but she couldn't stop staring at the blood on his skin, the body on the floor, the gun still in his hand. She'd known intellectually that Jinwoo could be violent when necessary. But seeing it, watching him kill someone with clinical efficiency, drove home the reality of his world in a way nothing else had. One of the wounded men was being carried in on a stretcher, clutching his side where blood seeped through his shirt. He locked eyes with Jinwoo and spoke in Korean. Minjun translated, his voice tight. Chen's man who escaped said to tell you this was a message. Chen wants a meeting. Tonight, warehouse in San Pedro. You come alone, or he kills Mississippi Park. Over my dead body, Jinwoo said. That's exactly what he's hoping for, Minjun replied. The private elevator opened and Park Kong-dae strode out with his own security team, surveying the scene with cold calculation. So Chin finally made his real move, he said. Good. Now I can justify going to war. No war, Jinwoo said. I'll meet with Chun. You'll walk into an obvious trap, Park said. Chin has no intention of negotiating. He wants you dead and me weakened. This is what he's been building toward. Then I'll end him before he can execute his plan, Jinwoo said with quiet certainty. Park studied his son, something almost like respect flickering in his eyes. You're thinking like a leader finally, he said. But you can't go alone. Take my men. Your men answer to you. Not me, Jinwoo said. If I'm doing this, I do it my way. Father and son stared at each other, decades of complicated history passing between them. Finally Park nodded. Your way, then. But if you die, I'm burning Chin's entire organization to the ground. Jinwoo turned to Naomi, taking her hands in his. I have to do this, he said quietly. It's the only way to end the threat to you. You can't go alone, Naomi said, her voice breaking. It's suicide. He'll kill you. Maybe, Jinwoo admitted. But if I don't go, you'll never be safe. Chin will keep coming, keep threatening you and your mother and anyone else I care about. This ends tonight, one way or another. Tears streamed down Naomi's face. I just found you, she said. I can't lose you now. Jinwoo pulled her against him, holding her tightly despite the blood and chaos surrounding them. You gave me compassion I didn't deserve, he murmured against her hair. You made me believe I could be more than my father's broken son. Let me give you the safety you deserve. Let me protect you the only way I know how. He pulled back, cupping her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. I love you, Naomi Park. Whatever happens tonight, know that you saved me first. Then he was gone, striding toward the elevator with Minjun, leaving Naomi standing amid the wreckage of the attack with Park Kangdi's cold eyes watching her. Your son is walking into a death trap, she said to the older man. And you're letting him. My son is finally being the man I always knew he could be, Park replied. Whether he lives or dies, he's doing it on his own terms. That's all any father can ask. Naomi wanted to scream at the callousness of it, the acceptance of Jinwoo's potential death like it was an honorable outcome. But Park was already on his phone, issuing orders in rapid Korean, and Naomi was left with nothing but fear and the memory of Jinwoo's final kiss, wondering if she'd just lost the man she loved to his need to protect her. Naomi spent 3 hours in a living room turned command center, watching Park Kangdae coordinate his forces while terror ate through her. Minjun had taken Jinwoo and a small team to the San Pedro warehouse. Park's own security forces had mobilized as backup, but they were ordered to hold position blocks away unless called. Jinwoo wanted to handle this his way, which apparently meant walking into near-certain death with only 4 men against Chin's entire operation. She couldn't just sit here, couldn't just wait for news that Jinwoo was dead. The man she loved was walking into a trap trying to save her, and she was supposed to hide in his penthouse like a helpless damsel. The thought made fury rise through her fear. Park was on yet another phone call, speaking in clipped Korean to someone coordinating his forces. When he ended the call, Naomi stepped in front of him before he could make another. Where's the warehouse? She demanded. What's the address? You don't need to know that, Park said dismissively. Tell me, Naomi insisted, or I'll find it myself and go alone. Park regarded her with those cold black eyes. You'll get yourself killed. You'll distract Jinwoo when he needs to focus. You're a liability. I'm the person he loves, Naomi shot back. And I'm not sitting here waiting to find out if he died for me. So either tell me where he is or waste time trying to stop me. Something shifted in Park's expression, assessment recalculating. You would go after him despite knowing you're not trained for combat, he said. Despite knowing your presence could endanger him further. Yes, Naomi said simply. Park studied her for another long moment, then pulled out his phone and showed her an address. My backup teams are staged here and here, he said, indicating points on a map. If you're going to be foolish, at least go with proper support. He gestured to one of his men. Take her to Captain Lee's position. Tell him she's with Jinwoo, under our protection. The drive to San Pedro felt endless despite the car racing through traffic. Naomi sat beside Park's stone-faced bodyguard in the back of a black SUV, her hands clenched in her lap, praying they wouldn't be too late. The sun had set, night falling over Los Angeles like a shroud, and by the time they reached the industrial area near the port, darkness was complete. Captain Lee commanded a team of 12 men staged in an abandoned building overlooking the warehouse. He was in his 40s, military bearing obvious in every movement, and he looked distinctly unhappy to see Naomi. Mississippi Park, he said in heavily accented English. This is not safe place for you. I know, Naomi said. But I'm here anyway. What's happening? Lee gestured to the warehouse below. Jinwoo arrived 30 minutes ago with Minjun and 3 others. Chen has at least 20 men inside. We have orders to hold unless signaled. He checked his watch. Jinwoo said to wait 1 hour. 20 minutes left. Naomi moved to the grimy window and looked down at the warehouse. Lights spilled from broken windows, and she could see movement inside, shadows of men with weapons. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What if they were already too late? What if Jinwoo was already hurt or dead? Suddenly gunfire erupted from inside the warehouse, rapid and intense. Captain Lee barked orders in Korean, and his team mobilized instantly, rushing for the exits. Naomi followed, ignoring Lee's shouted protest that she should stay. She wasn't trained, wasn't armed, had no business running toward a firefight. But Jinwoo was in there, and she couldn't just hide. The warehouse district descended into chaos. Lee's team stormed the building from the north entrance while more of Park's forces materialized from other positions, surrounding the warehouse in coordinated assault. Naomi stayed behind the first wave, watching armed men pour into the building, hearing the gunfire intensify. Smoke began drifting from broken windows. She slipped inside through a side entrance the security teams had left unguarded in their rush, finding herself in a maze of concrete corridors and rusted machinery. The sounds of fighting echoed from deeper in the building, shouts and gunshots and breaking glass. Naomi followed the noise, her whole body shaking with fear and adrenaline. She emerged into a vast open space, the warehouse's main floor, and the scene before her was like something from a nightmare. Bodies on the ground, some moving and some not. Jinwoo and his small team had taken cover behind a stack of shipping containers, pinned down by Chen's forces. Park's backup teams were engaging from multiple entry points, but Chen's men had defensible positions and superior numbers. The air reeked of gunpowder and blood. Naomi spotted Jinwoo immediately. He was crouched behind cover, gun in hand, blood streaking his face from a cut above his eye. Minjun was beside him, shouting coordinates, both of them looking exhausted and desperate. As Naomi watched, Chen himself appeared on a catwalk above, a man in his 50s with silver hair and cold eyes, flanked by bodyguards. He had a phone in his hand, and he was shouting something down at Jinwoo. The firefight paused, both sides holding fire as Chen spoke. Naomi couldn't hear the words over the ringing in her ears, but she saw Jinwoo's face go pale, saw the way his body tensed. Chen held up the phone, showing something on the screen, and Naomi's stomach dropped. Her mother. Chen had people at the hospital where her mother worked. This was the final play. Surrender or watch everyone Jinwoo loved die. Naomi saw it in the way Jinwoo slowly stood, hands raising, his gun dangling from one finger in clear surrender. Minjun grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back down, but Jinwoo shook him off. He was going to give himself up to save Naomi's mother. Was going to let Chen execute him rather than risk more innocent lives. Naomi moved before conscious thought caught up. She stepped out of the shadows, her hands raised, her voice carrying across the sudden quiet. Wait, she called. Please wait. Every eye in the warehouse swung toward her. Jinwoo's face went white with horror. Minjun cursed. Chen's expression shifted to interest. Captain Lee, visible near one of the entrances, looked ready to murder her himself. Mississippi Park, Chen called down in accented English. How considerate of you to join us. You've saved me the trouble of retrieving you. Let her mother go, Naomi said, her voice steadier than she felt. She's innocent. She has nothing to do with this. Chen laughed, a sound without humor. No one is innocent, he said. But perhaps we can negotiate. You for the mother. Jinwoo watches you die, or he joins my organization. Either way, I win. Naomi walked further into the open space, ignoring Jinwoo's harsh command to stop, to get down, to get out. Her attention fixed on one of Chen's men, a young guy probably not even 20, positioned behind a concrete pillar. He looked terrified, his hands shaking on his weapon, his eyes too wide. She recognized that look. Danny had looked like that sometimes, when he was pretending to be tough, but was really just scared. She angled toward him, her movements slow and non-threatening. Hey, She said quietly, I'm Naomi. What's your name? The young man blinked, confused by the question. His gun wavered. Why does it matter? He asked in heavily accented English. Because you look like my brother did, Naomi said. Before he died in a gang shooting. He was 19, terrified of the violence, but trying to survive the only way he knew how. She took another step closer. You don't want to be here, do you? You don't want to kill anyone. Silence, Chin barked from above. Kill her. The young man's gun came up, but his hands were shaking worse now. Naomi didn't move, just held his gaze. You don't have to do this, she said gently. Whatever Chin has on you, whatever brought you here, you still have a choice. You can choose compassion over violence. You can choose to be better than this. She's trying to manipulate you, Chin shouted. Shoot her now, or I'll kill you myself. The young man looked between Naomi and Chin, his face anguished. She could see him struggling, the same struggle Danny had faced every day in their old neighborhood. The pressure to prove toughness, to follow orders, to be part of something even when that something was destructive. But also the deeper human instinct toward kindness, toward protecting instead of destroying. My brother never got to make the choice, Naomi said softly. He died before he could find another way. But you're still here. You can still choose differently. The young man's gun lowered fractionally. Behind Naomi, she heard Jinwoo moving, heard Minjun and Captain Lee's teams repositioning. The moment stretched taut with possibility. Then the young man stepped back, his weapon dropping completely. I won't, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I won't kill her. The warehouse exploded back into violence. Chun screamed orders. His men opened fire. But the young soldier's hesitation had created a crucial opening. Jinwoo was already moving, his team surging forward. Park's forces attacked from all sides, overwhelming Chin's defenses with coordinated precision. Naomi dropped to the ground as bullets flew overhead, crawling toward cover while chaos erupted around her. The fight was brutal but brief. Park's forces had numbers and training, and Chin's men were demoralized by their comrades' defection. Within minutes, most of Chin's soldiers had surrendered or fled. Chin himself tried to escape through the catwalk, but Jinwoo cut him off, his gun trained on the older man with deadly calm. On your knees, Jinwoo commanded, and Chin complied, rage and defeat warring on his face. Park Kangdae strode into the warehouse like a conquering general, surveying the scene with cold satisfaction. His men secured Chun, binding his hands and forcing him down. Minjun was already on the phone, confirming Naomi's mother was safe, that Chin's people at the hospital had been neutralized. Jinwoo found Naomi huddled behind an overturned crate, pulled her to her feet, and crushed her against him. You could have been killed, he said, his voice raw. What were you thinking coming here? That I love you, Naomi managed, her face pressed to his chest. And I'm not losing you. Your world scares me, Jinwoo, but a life without you scares me more. He held her tighter, his hand cradling the back of her head, his breath shaking with relief or reaction or both. I thought I was going to watch you die, he said. When you walked out into the open, my heart stopped. Park approached them, his expression unreadable. That was either the stupidest thing I've ever witnessed, he said, looking at Naomi, or the most brilliant. You talked down one of Chin's soldiers, created an opening that saved lives. He paused, something like respect in his cold eyes. My son chose well. You have steel I didn't see before, and compassion that's even more dangerous than violence. She makes me stronger, Jinwoo said, still holding Naomi. Not weaker. I see that now. Park nodded slowly. So do I. He turned to his men. Clean this up. Chin will be dealt with appropriately. To Jinwoo, he added, we should talk. About your future. They stood amid the wreckage of the warehouse, emergency lights casting everything in harsh shadows, while Park laid out what came next. Chin's organization would be dismantled, his territory absorbed or redistributed. The threat to Jinwoo and Naomi would be eliminated completely. Park would make sure every rival knew that attacking Jinwoo or his woman meant declaring war on the Kang family. And in return? Jinwoo asked. Park studied his son for a long moment. In return, you continue as you have been. Your architecture firm, your legitimate business. You represent our family's respectable face, while I handle the darker operations. He glanced at Naomi. With her at your side, you'll build the kind of life that makes our family something more than just an organization. Something lasting. I want out of the violence, Jinwoo said firmly. I'll help with legitimate business ventures, consult on property development, but I'm done with this. He gestured at the destruction around them. Done with constant threats and firefights and living like a target. You've earned that right, Park said, and the admission seemed to cost him something. Your strength is different than mine, Jinwoo. I see that now. You survived torture that would have broken most men. You built something real outside my shadow. And tonight you were willing to die to protect those you love. That's strength I should have recognized sooner. Father and son looked at each other across decades of complicated history and misunderstanding. Then Park inclined his head slightly, a gesture that looked almost like respect. You've become the man I hoped you'd be, he said. Just not the way I expected. In the aftermath, with Chun in custody and his forces scattered, Naomi and Jinwoo returned to the penthouse as dawn broke over Los Angeles. They were both exhausted, still wearing blood-spattered clothes, but alive. Safe. Together. Jinwoo pulled Naomi onto the couch, holding her close as early morning light painted the city gold. Marry me, he said quietly. Naomi pulled back to look at his face, wondering if she'd heard correctly. What? Marry me, Jinwoo repeated. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you the compassion you showed me. Let me give you the safe, normal life you deserve. His hand cupped her cheek. I love you more than I thought I could love anything. And I want forever with you, Naomi Park. Tears blurred Naomi's vision. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Jinwoo kissed her like he was breathing her in, like she was oxygen he'd been denied too long. When they finally broke apart, he was smiling, real and genuine and full of hope. We'll leave the penthouse, he said. Get a house in a good neighborhood. You'll go to nursing school. I'll design buildings. We'll be disgustingly normal and happy. That sounds perfect, Naomi said, laughing through her tears. The next months passed in a blur of change. Chin's organization was systematically dismantled, his people scattered or absorbed into other operations. The threat that had hung over Naomi's life disappeared like smoke. She returned to work at Celestine long enough to give proper notice, then enrolled in nursing school. Jinwoo helped her find an apartment near campus, then convinced her she should just move in with him instead. They found a house in Pasadena, modest compared to the penthouse, but warm and full of light, with a yard and neighbors, and everything normal people had. Naomi's mother came to dinner one Sunday evening and spent an hour grilling Jinwoo about his intentions and his family and whether her daughter would be safe. Jinwoo answered every question with patient honesty, and by the end of the evening, Naomi's mother had grudgingly admitted he seemed like a good man despite his connections. Your brother would have liked him, she told Naomi quietly. Danny always wanted you to find someone who'd protect you. Park Kang-dae attended their small engagement dinner, arriving with his usual bodyguards but leaving the intimidation tactics at the door. He and Naomi's mother eyed each other like generals negotiating peace terms, both protective of their children in vastly different ways. By the end of the evening, they'd reached an unspoken understanding. These two would marry whether the parents approved or not, so they might as well make the best of it. The wedding took place on a mild Saturday in spring, a year after that first night when Naomi had shown compassion to a stranger having a panic attack in a crowded restaurant. The ceremony was small, held in a garden venue with maybe 50 guests total. Family and close friends only. Minjun served as Jinwoo's best man, having become not just security but genuine friend. Maya stood up for Naomi, crying happy tears and admitting she'd never thought this romance would actually work. Naomi wore a simple white dress and carried white roses. Jinwoo wore a dark suit and couldn't stop smiling. When they exchanged vows, promising to love and protect each other through whatever challenges came, Naomi saw her mother crying in the front row. Beside her, Park Kang-dae watched with an expression that might have been satisfaction. His son had found something real, something that made the Kang family more than just an organization, that seemed to please him in ways violence and power never had. At the reception, Jinwoo pulled Naomi onto the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. The song was slow and romantic, some Korean ballad that Jinwoo had chosen. He held her close, swaying gently, and whispered in her ear. A year ago, I was broken and alone and convinced I'd never be anything but a disappointment. Then you showed me compassion. You saw me. You saved me, Naomi. We saved each other, Naomi replied. You gave me safety and love. I gave you compassion and acceptance. Together we're something better than we could have been apart. They danced while friends and family watched. Two people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built something real from it. If you followed Naomi and Jinwoo's journey from that first chaotic night to this moment of peace and love, I hope their story touched your heart the way it touched mine. Share this with someone who believes in the power of compassion to transform lives, and subscribe for more stories about love that heals and hope that endures. Because sometimes showing kindness to a stranger really can change everything. 1 year after the wedding, Naomi and Jinwoo had settled into a life that felt almost impossibly normal compared to where they'd started. Their house in Pasadena had become a home, filled with Jinwoo's architectural sketches and Naomi's medical textbooks, and the comfortable clutter of two people building a life together. The penthouse had been sold, that glass fortress in the sky replaced by something warmer and more human. Naomi was in her second year of nursing school, top of her class, on track to specialize in trauma care like she'd always dreamed. She worked part-time at a community clinic in Koreatown, gaining experience and making a difference in lives that reminded her of her brothers. Every patient she helped felt like honoring Danny's memory, turning her grief into something that mattered. Jinwoo's architecture firm had expanded, taking on projects that combined profitability with purpose. He designed affordable housing developments that didn't sacrifice beauty or dignity. He mentored young architects from disadvantaged backgrounds. He'd found ways to use his position and resources to build things that actually helped people, and the work satisfied him in ways his father's organization never had. They both volunteered with an organization that helped trauma survivors, using their own experiences to counsel others struggling with PTSD and recovery. Jinwoo led support groups for people dealing with panic disorders, speaking openly about his own journey. Naomi worked with families who'd lost loved ones to violence, offering the compassion and understanding she'd craved after Danny died. Park Kang-dae had largely stepped back from the organization's day-to-day operations, delegating more to his lieutenants while focusing on legitimate business ventures. He had dinner with Jinwoo and Naomi once a month, awkward meals that were getting gradually less tense as all three of them learned how to be a family instead of just connected by obligation. The old man seemed genuinely proud of what his son had built, even if he'd never quite say it out loud. One morning in early autumn, Naomi woke before Jinwoo and padded into the kitchen to start coffee. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting everything gold and warm. She pressed her hand to her stomach, feeling the small swell there that had only recently become visible, and smiled. They'd found out 3 weeks ago and had told almost no one yet, keeping the news precious and private a little longer. Jinwoo emerged from the bedroom still half asleep, his hair mussed, wearing sweatpants and one of his old USC t-shirts. He moved behind Naomi at the counter and wrapped his arms around her waist, his hands coming to rest over hers on her stomach. "Good morning," he murmured against her neck. "How are you both feeling?" "Perfect," Naomi said, leaning back into him. "We're perfect." They stood like that for a while, the coffee brewing forgotten, just holding each other in the quiet morning light. The house was peaceful, the neighborhood safe, their life ordinary in all the best ways. Naomi thought about that first night at Celestine, the panic attack that had started everything, the single moment of compassion that had somehow led to all of this. "Thank you," Jinwoo said quietly, "for seeing me when no one else would, for showing me there was another way to live, for loving me despite all the reasons you shouldn't have." Naomi turned in his arms to face him. "You gave me safety," she said, "a home and protection and love when I thought I'd never trust anyone connected to that world. I gave you compassion and understanding and a chance to be more than your past. We gave each other love, Jinwoo. That's what matters." He kissed her gently, his hand coming up to rest on her stomach again. "We're going to be parents," he said, wonder in his voice. "We're going to give this child all the love and safety and acceptance we found with each other." "Yes," Naomi agreed. "And we're going to teach them that compassion is strength, that choosing to see the good in people, to show kindness even when it's hard, can change everything." Jinwoo rested his forehead against hers, both of them cradling the new life growing between them. Outside, the city woke slowly, morning traffic building and birds singing and neighbors starting their days. Inside, two people who'd found each other across impossible distances held each other close, and felt the future unfolding with gentle promise. Their hands intertwined, wedding rings catching the sunlight, proof of vows kept and love earned. The chaos and violence that had brought them together felt impossibly distant now, replaced by this peaceful morning and the quiet joy of knowing they'd built something real, something lasting, something worth every risk they'd taken. Naomi looked at Jinwa's face, saw the love and contentment there, and knew with absolute certainty that showing compassion to a stranger having a panic attack in a crowded restaurant had been the best decision she'd ever made. Because sometimes kindness changes everything. Sometimes it saves two people who desperately needed saving. Sometimes it builds a love strong enough to transform the darkness into light.